Here's how to sew a cute flat kitty. Here's what we need to make flat kitty. First we'll need a fabric for the body. I'm using this multicoloured minky. And we'll need our pattern pieces that are available from threadistry.com. Put the link in the show notes. We'll need some embroidery floss for the face, a small scrap of felt or other fabric for the inside of the ears. I'm using a light poplin fabric to get the 3D effect for the legs. We'll also need some polyfill or your preferred stuffing, and then your basic sewing supplies. Some scissors, rotary cutter, coordinating thread, pins, a hand sewing needle, and you'll also need some fusible web or heat and bond light, which is not shown, and of course a sewing machine. So here we have all our pattern pieces cut out. We have our mirrored set of the body. We have an inner piece cut out of the poplin. We have a mirrored set of the tail. We have two mirrored sets of the ear, and we have a mirrored set of the inner ear. Next, we'll transfer our pattern markings to the right side of one of our body pieces. So we'll decide which one we like better. I think we'll have the colourful side on the front. I like to use a large needle to poke holes in the pattern pieces and then use a washable marker to transfer the pattern markings onto the fabric and then do a connect the dots. So I'm just going to do that for the face and the legs. So there we have our pattern markings transferred. Next, on the wrong side, we'll line up our inner piece. This is optional if you want to create the 3D effect for the legs. I'm going to use my sewing clips. Just going to clip that in position. And what we're going to do is sew around this outer edge and leaving this top edge open. Now we'll sew along the inner and outer leg lines, but we're not going to sew these individual little toe curves just now. So just down along this outer leg, inner leg, outer leg with the sewing machine. Now we're going to use the embroidery floss to embroider the eyes, the whiskers, the nose and the mouth, and we're also going to embroider over those lines that we've just stitched to make them pop a little more. So I'm using 6 strands of embroidery thread, and as I've mentioned previously, I'm not a big fan of hand embroidery, so it's not going to be perfect, but that just adds a bit of character. So I'll start with the eyes. Okay, now that we've done that embroidery, next we're going to lightly stuff these 2 front paws to get that nice little 3D effect. So we'll use a little bit of polyfill and my trusty chopstick. Just turn it over. But we're not going to get into that inner section, just the 2 legs, front legs. And there we go. So it just makes those 2 front paws pop out a little bit. and give it more of a 3D effect, but still be a nice flat toy. And the next thing we'll do is embroider those 2 toes here and 1 extra toe on the back paws. So there I've done all of the paws, although some of them are getting lost in that minky. So we just take a small scrap of fusible web and put that on the back of each felt piece, and then place that on the ear. You want to have just the 1/4 of an inch seam allowance at the bottom, a little bit more space along the top. Do that for the second one, making sure you've got mirrored sides. And I'll grab a pressing cloth and I'll just fuse them into place. We'll sew around the outer edge just to hold that into position. You could use either a straight stitch, a satin stitch, or a blanket stitch. I'm just going to use a straight stitch. Next, we're going to place our ears right sides together. And stitching around the outside, leaving this end open that attaches to the head. Okay, next we'll turn the ears right side out. You might want to clip that point, but I find with minky it kind of stretches nicely and don't have to worry so much about getting a nice point. And I'll just run the knitting needle along. Next we'll grab our 2 tail pieces and put them right sides together. And I've been flying by the seat of my pants, not using any pins so far, but I think with this one I will put lots of pins to hold everything together. Really, with minky you can't have too many pins. And so we're going to sew around the outside and leave this flat edge that attaches to the body open. And we'll just make a few little clips around that curve. And this one here. I think the rest will be fine. And we'll turn this right side out, using the knitting needle to get, or a chopstick to get all those curves nice and smooth. Now with the tail, you want to stuff the end bit here quite firmly, and then you can put a little bit of stuffing but not too much in the bit that actually sits behind the body. So we'll grab some polyfill and the chopstick. So the end is quite firm, and I'm just putting a little bit in this last section. This minky is quite fluffy, so I don't really need a lot to give it volume. And if you want to, you can also put some stuffing in the ears, but I think these ones are going to stand up just fine as they are, so I'm not going to put any stuffing in. And we'll put the tail in position. And the ears, they're going to want to go like that. So we'll then flip that so that it's right sides together. And it's going to require a little bit of manipulating because you've got an inside curve and an outside curve that are matching. And we'll just do a basting stitch to hold them in place. Next, we will tuck the tail out of the way. We'll grab the back piece and place it right sides together. And then hold it in place with lots of pins, particularly around the ears, where they'll want to naturally pull in. And when we're sewing it, we'll need to leave a gap so that we can turn it right sides out. So I think the easiest spot is in this section here. So I'm going to mark that with an X with my pins, because there's nothing worse than forgetting and sewing it all the way shut. So we're going to sew outside, around the outside, all the way around, and leaving a gap here of 1.5 inches, maybe 4 to 5 centimeters. So I had a little video fail here, but I've sewn that seam and then I've clipped the seam allowance where the head joins the body, and then I've turned it right sides out. Now it's time to stuff it. How much you fill is up to you. But I like mine to just have a little bit of cuddle to them. We'll grab our normal sewing thread and use a ladder stitch to stitch up the opening. After I tie a knot, I'll bury the end of the thread by just poking the needle through the teddy and then clip the end of the thread. And lastly, because I'm not a fan of the flippy floppy tail, I'll just pull that tail to the back and then sew a couple of stitches either side to hold it in position. Once again, bury the end of the thread. If you're worried that that could get pulled off, you could hand stitch all along the end of the tail to hold that in place. Now it's time to cuddle your new flat kitty.